I request you all to kindly take your seats. This next day, second day of SCO Young Authors Conference. Today, our first session is on art and culture, focusing on artistic expression and cultural representation in the digital age. All our esteemed speakers are here. I request them all to kindly come on the dais. Ms. Elena Remizova, Mr. Artem Ragimov from Russian Federation, Ms. Deboroti Chakraborty, India, Mrs. Preet Sokhi, India, and Mr. Subir Dey. Before we start the session, as per the tradition of National Book Trust India, I would like to request our Chief Editor and Joint Director, Mr. Kumar Vikram, to kindly felicitate the esteemed speakers. Ms. Elena Remizova, Mr. Artem Ragimov, Ms. Deboroti Chakraborty, Mr. Preet Sokhi, and Mr. Subir Dey. Thank you, sir. The moderator of this session, Dr. Subir Dey, is a design educator, researcher, and illustrator, currently an assistant professor in the Department of Design at IIT Delhi. He has a PhD in design from IIT Guwahati and was awarded a Volkswagen Foundation scholarship to attend summer school at the University of Siegen, Germany. His research focuses on graphic, narratives, and creative thinking in collaboration with UCL. He has illustrated for Amar Chitrakatha, Inkilab Comics, and Penguin Random House. I now request our moderator to kindly start the session. Thank you.
Very good morning to all of you, and thank you for such a lovely and warming welcoming session and the introduction. So it's a pleasure to be here at the second day of the SCO Young Authors Conference 2025, and I'm very happy and delighted to moderate this session, which is very also a topic close to my heart and my practice as an illustrator and creative artist. So the panel is themed as artistic expression and cultural representation in the digital age. And today we have been joined by very talented and passionate educators, performance artists, and poets to discuss the session about what is happening in the digital age with respect to the artistic and creative expression. This panel is also chaired by Dr. Elena Remizova. She is the director of Russian House, New Delhi. She is the head of the representative office of Rostro-Dinchesvo in India. Before her post to Delhi, she has served as director, Russian House in Mumbai. She has taken various initiatives to strengthen the friendship between Russia and India, such as outreaching programs and collaboration with various academic cultural organizations in India. We are glad to be joined by Dr. Elena. Thank you so much. Yeah. So we are joined by the first speaker, Dr. Deboroti Chakraborty. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Performing Arts, Presidency University, India. She is the director of the project Digital Archiving of Performing Arts, South Asian Context, supported through an international grant by ArtLink on behalf of South Culture Fund. Her notable work includes Thinking of Indian Modernity, a meeting point of Rabindra Nitya and the classical idiom of Bharatnatyam, and How to Do Comparative Literature, answers Claudio Gillin in The Challenge of Comparative Literature. One of the recent publications is Performing Connectedness Across Public and Digital Spaces, published by Cornell University Press. We are glad to be joined by Dr. Deboroti. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much for this extremely generous introduction. I would like to start with my deepest gratitude for SCO and National Book Trust for organizing this conference in which we are discussing something that is very, very topical at this point, and the discussion and the discourses are continuing for a couple of days with a lot of meaning. So thank you and deepest gratitude for that. Today, I'm going to speak for the panel which explores artistic expressions in the digital age. I'm going to speak as a practitioner of theater, but also as one who, as a professor of performing arts. So, and in my practice, I've always tried to build in pedagogy and practice and to articulate research. And thereby, I think the digital age and the mediatized world is very important for us to think, to stop, and to reflect. Since this is related to my own practice, a large part of my growing up years has been, like many people, in a middle-class family, and it comprised of listening to stories from my grandmother, from aunts, from my mother, in the whole family. And I remember that my grandmother would always speak of very simple rituals, rituals like that of making tea, of how she carried a small plant from her village, of cooking for a large family, of what happened when they were displaced. And I understood that her personal mode of coping was to engage with life-affirming practices and was to share stories, which brought me to an understanding much later as an artist and as a storyteller, that in our everyday practices, there are rituals, and these rituals are validated only when they relate to culture and to identity, and they bring new meanings when we are sharing, and when we are sharing stories, and this always happens thereby in communion. So I think artistic expression lives in liveness. Artistic expression lives in communion and in being able to share it amidst a community. Walter Benjamin, in one of his seminal essays in 1936, which is called The Storyteller, he says, and he rings a prophetic bell, because he says that the figure of the storyteller is dying out as we enter an age when experience has fallen in value. What probably he means to say is that people returned in 1936, so people returned from wars with a very deep silence of loss, of trauma, and the communicability of experiences had begun to decline. The art of sharing stories within communities had started to decline, and he was actually noting a shift from the age of storytelling to that of information. And if we extend this whole idea, I think we are again noticing a shift from the age of information to also that of technology and to that of the digital. Now, amidst this world of technology, of a mediatized world, of the digital space, traditions of performing arts in South Asia always offers us with a privilege of witnessing traditions in lived rituals, in people's lives, in ceremonies, in living traditions. So we can always say that rather than speaking of performance and of performing arts, particularly in South Asia, rather than speaking of these as digitized, we have to talk about performing arts as a repertoire, because they live in the repertoire of people. So we immediately enter a moment of conflict, a conflict between the digital, between what is archived, what is museumized, what is mediatized, and that which is living, which is fluid, which is ephemeral, which is transformative, and thereby we are dealing with two domains which are conflicting and which are contradictory. And within this historical framework, there has always been a debate between how to look at the digital and how to look at performance. So people like Peggy Fallon has spoken about how digitizing is completely a different ontological enterprise, and it evokes the economy of production, and it has nothing to do with performance. Whereas somebody like Oslander says that we are living in a digital world, and thereby liveness is in itself mediatized, and thereby we are not speaking of two contradictory domains. So I think a major focus at this point, the major focus that many artists are exploring, many thinkers are exploring, is how do we reconcile these two domains? How do we explore the digital space as one that can embrace fluidity, that can uphold the transformative and the immersive potential that is embedded in live arts? This is to say that the digital is a methodology. The digital is an approach, but that cannot and that must not replace the artistic skill, the human quality of storytelling, the need for human communion, and the methodological approach towards arts. So what the digital and the artistic expression can together do is to arrive at a point of reconciliation, and that we can do through artistic practice, but also through arriving at innovative research and pedagogic models. I think a conference like this is very, very important because it's bringing up discussions around both, around what could be newer pedagogic models, what could be newer research, and what are the newer forms of artistic expression. So in my work, particularly in my pedagogic work of trying to articulate artistic exploration in pedagogy, digital archiving has opened up completely a new dimension and completely a new field, particularly when I'm looking at digital archiving of performing arts in the South Asian context. And that's a very, very important, that brought very important insight into the teaching of performing arts, because in this context, I think digital, more than anything else, the act of archiving or the act of digitizing evokes the act of listening. Primarily, technology comes much later, and technology comes to aid the process of digitizing. But I think as a philosophical truth, it is the art of listening. How am I listening? What am I listening to? Am I listening to silences? Am I listening to lived rituals, people's experiences, traditions? And then I know what to digitize. Once I know what to digitize, that will prompt me how to digitize. So the how comes much later. We are dealing with three principles of the digital, I think, at this point. One is why. Why do we need to digitize? The second is what. What do we need to digitize is very important in terms of pedagogic research-oriented, but also archival approaches. And then how? So the use of technology, the use of artificial intelligence, the use of different kinds of digital tools, of metadata, all of this builds into the ethics and politics of using the digital and of using the AI. But what is of primary importance and what is of primary focus is the art of listening. And I think, Aristotle also talks about this in his Poetics when he says that he gives us a term that's called techne. And by techne, he says that it is the craft. So at the core of this, we are dealing with craft. Thereby, we are dealing with artistic expressions, we are dealing with human endeavor. Because it is the craft of listening, it's the craft of digitizing. So I think after the pandemic, the digital and ways of dealing with the digital has taken a very, very sharp turn. But it also already existed, I think, from a decade back. And I remember, and I'm going to quote to end, as a concluding remark, something that a theater practitioner wrote about. His name is Nicholas Berger. And Nicholas writes, as kind of an internal preparation to accept or to come to terms with the digital, Nicholas writes, we must lean into this pain. We must feel the grief. We must mourn. Mourn the loss of work, the loss of jobs, the loss of money, the loss of life. Mourn the temporary loss of an art form that demands assembly. Lean into the grief. Lean in, lean in. We must remind ourselves that mourning, living, celebrating, making art is a human act, not a digital one. It is only in this acknowledgement that we will survive. The internet is not going to save us. We are. And this resonates with what I value to be very, very important in my artistic work, that the digital is not going to save us. It's human experiences and artistic skills in collaboration with the digital space is what is going to give birth to newer ways of creating art, of exploring the digital as a space, just the way we explored probably, the proscenium as a space at one point of time, or the courtyard as a space. What happens when digital platforms become a space? How does an artist explore that space? I think that is going to give birth to innovation. That is going to give birth to newer artistic forms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deboroti. And it's very fascinating that you opened up with a very important strands of thought, specifically with the essence of the digital with relationship to the digital practitioners as well as the human practitioners. I think that sets the tone of the today's session. And with this, I would also invite the next speaker, Mr. Artem Ragimov. He's a poet and winner of the National Literary Prize, Slovo 2024, finalist of the All-Russian Young Poetry Festival Filatov Fest 24-25, and the Pushkin Lyceum Literary Prize 2024. He's an artist of Vlad Malenko's Moscow Theatre of Poets. He has been published in many Russian literary magazines, including Siberian Lights, Floating Bridge, and Literary Gazette. Born in 1992 in Novosibirsk, he works in IT as a UX writer's team leader. Welcome, Artyom, and the floor is yours.
Thanks. Dear friends, first of all, I want to express my deepest gratitude to National Book Trust for inviting us to India. Your country amazed us with its beautiful nature, delicious food, beautiful, smart, and very friendly people. Thank you very much. Okay. Dear friends, we live in a unique time. Today, anyone with a smartphone and an internet connection can be a creator, a publisher, even a critic. The digital age has completely changed the cultural landscape. It erased borders. It created new rules of the game. I invite you to think with me about the paradox of this new world. It has both bright and dark sides, because digitalization is too big a process to be only positive or only negative. Let's start with the obvious good. Technology has greatly reduced the distance between an artist's work and the audience reaction. The powerful filters are gone. Publishers, gallery owners, critics, before they stood like gatekeepers. You had to knock on their doors again and again just to be heard. Now you can knock on any screen. This is real democratization of culture. Everyone can respond to you directly. Everyone can be the first reader, the first to discover a new talent. That sense of participation and of co-creation is extremely valuable. But here lies the danger. In the race for speed, quality often suffers. Some ideas, some feelings need time to be settled, to mature, for the writer on one side and for the reader. And there's another trap. Online artists may believe they have a loyal audience, but often it's just family, friends, like-minded colleagues. Their like is not always a review, but sometimes it's just a politeness. In a way, the digital era takes us back to our ancient rules. To the campfire, to the town square, to that direct connection between storyteller and tribe, between singer and crowd. Is it a step backward? I don't think so. It's the next turn of the historical spiral. We are not canceling Gutenberg's revolution, we are building a digital floor on top of it. Marshall McLuhan predicted this 50 years ago. He called it global village. And today it's here. We all stand on the same village square. A poet in Russia can get instant feedback from a poet in Uzbekistan. An Indian writer can draw inspiration from modern China's literature. The borders that once divided us are gone. But this global village has its risks. The biggest one, in my opinion, it's simplification. Algorithms fight for our attention, and so they feed us what is easy, what is bright, what is shocking. Here we face a practical problem. The Russian economist Alexander Dolgin described it well in the economics of symbolic exchange. The main problem today is not a lack of content. It's a lack of attention and a lack of trust. There are millions of creators, billions of works. How do we find what is truly valuable? And another question, what new systems will help us discover new, real talents and help artists grow? Now that old institutions have lost their power, the old rules of masterpiece are blurry. Advertising and algorithms don't show us quality. They show us what sells or what keeps us scrolling longer. We need new guides, not just curators. We need translators, navigators between cultures. So the digital age doesn't make life simpler. It makes it richer, more layered, more demanding. It gives us freedom of expression. It gives us a chance for true global dialogue. But it also gives us responsibility for our taste, for our attention, for our choices. The responsibility to keep the main square of our global village alive with meaningful conversation, not to simplify each other's thinking, but to complicate it. That, I believe, is the great cultural challenge of our time. Thank you.
Thank you for such a provocative, evocative, and a thoughtful strands on what the digital is kind of bringing, and also bringing the other sides of digital that is kind of looming challenges which is providing to the humanity. That's a wonderful opener, Artyom. So with this, we will now invite the next speaker, Shri Preet Sokhi. He's an assistant professor and head of the dance department at the World University of Design, where he also pursues a PhD in performing arts. A UGC NET qualified scholar, he specializes in Bharatnatyam, Indian classical dance traditions, iconography and cultural history. His notable works include the iconography of Lord Bhairava in literary sources and exploring non-anthropocentric design principles in Indian classical dance. Shri Preet Sokhi, the stage is yours for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a privilege to be presenting in the Art and Culture session of the SCO Young Authors Conference 2025. My work engages with performing arts, Indian knowledge systems, heritage, and here I will reflect on how digitization has reshaped the ways in which we preserve, study, and share Indian culture. When we speak of digitization, we often reduce it to the technical process of scanning manuscripts or uploading recordings. But in reality, digitization is a cultural transformation. It is often compared to the printing press revolution, which made books and literacy widely available and accessible, and forever changed human knowledge. In much the same ways, digital technologies today are altering 4 core areas of cultural life: how we preserve heritage, how we transmit knowledge through pedagogy, how we perform and reimagine traditions, and how audience engages with art. Together, these shifts are creating an entirely new cultural ecology. Digitization essentially means converting, preserving, and disseminating cultural knowledge in formats that can be stored and shared digitally. This is happening in multiple domains. In heritage, manuscripts and monuments are being digitally documented, catalogued. In archives, old recordings and photographs are being restored. In the performing arts, we see live streams, and in pedagogy, online platforms allow teaching and discussion beyond geography. Indian knowledge systems refers to the vast intellectual, cultural, and artistic traditions of India. This includes not only philosophy and sciences, but also literature, art, music, and dance. The NEP 2020 National Education Policy emphasizes the integration of IKS into curriculum, ensuring that students connect with their heritage in meaningful and critical ways. Digitization has played a crucial role in making this vision possible. For instance, under the Gyan Bharatam mission, more than 44 lakh manuscripts have been digitized in partnership with various institutions. This allows scholars and practitioners to access rare texts, compare different commentaries, and study performance manuals that were once extremely difficult to obtain. Most importantly, digitization brings IKS into global academic conversations, allowing Indian traditions to be studied alongside with other knowledge systems, strengthening both research and pedagogy. One of the most ambitious heritage initiatives in India is the National Mission on Monuments and Antiquities, launched in 2007. As of 2025, more than 118,000 antiquities have been digitized under the Archaeological Survey of India. Cutting-edge tools such as artificial intelligence, three-dimensional scanning, and geographic information systems are being deployed. This mission also received recognition from UNESCO for its global relevance. But the challenges are serious. Many sites lack infrastructure, funding is insufficient, and there is a shortage of trained professionals who can combine conservation expertise with digital skills. These are the areas that needs urgent strengthening. Institutional work has been critical in this process. The Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, for instance, manages vast manuscripts and multimedia collections. The Sangeet Natak Academy has been digitizing documentation of various senior professional dancers. Rare recordings of theatre, dance and music as well are available. CCRT, or the Center for Cultural Resource and Training, uses digital kits for education in schools, ensuring that young students gain early exposure to Indian arts. Doordarshan's archives, earlier led by Kamili Niddat, rescued thousands of hours of delaying tapes, giving us invaluable visual records of maestros in dance and music. Without such institutional efforts, larger portions of our cultural memory would have been lost. A case study worth highlighting is the National Cultural Audiovisual Archives, housed at Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. The workflow here involves digitizing materials, describing it in detail, and then storing it on the Digitalia platform. So far, over 20,000 hours of cultural recordings have been preserved and made globally accessible. Importantly, project sets benchmarks for how archives in India should handle digital collections. In that sense, it is not only about preservation, but also about shaping national standards for heritage management. In performing arts, digitization has opened new possibilities. It supports tradition by creating fresh ways to preserve choreographies, share teaching, and make performances accessible to wider audiences. Let me highlight a few examples to show this transformation. Kalakshetra Foundation has been at the forefront of digitization in the field of Bharatanatyam. All of its dance music compositions have been digitized, and several audio CDs of selected pieces have been released for the public. A complete Kalakshetra Margam has been digitized, which is not available in the public domain. This not only preserves the repertoire, but also demonstrates the teaching pedagogy of Kalakshetra. For its students, a much larger body of digitized audio is available through the institution itself. In addition, a significant amount of Kalakshetra's digitized material is also accessible on Internet Archive, giving scholars and practitioners around the world the opportunity to engage with these resources. Priyadarshini Govind is one of the most senior exponents of Bharatanatyam who has actively embraced digitization. She not only curates her performances online for audiences, but has also created a structured digital course titled the Learning Ladder Series. In this program, she has self-digitized herself and her Abhinaya classes in great detail, making them available throughout the website. This allows students across the world to learn directly from her, even if they cannot access her in person. Her work shows how individual artists are taking the initiative to preserve and transmit knowledge using digital tools. Kalakriya practice CDs are a simple but powerful example of digitization in performing arts. These recordings provide reliable tracks for Bharatanatyam practice. Before this, students relied heavily on live musicians for rehearsals. With the CDs, training became more flexible and accessible, particularly for those outside big cultural centers. It shows how technology can support continuity of practice while also respecting Indian traditions and methods. Pandit Birju Maharajji's compositions and teaching have been preserved through recordings and digital media. These recordings are now used not only by his direct disciples, but by Kathak students around the world. They keep his style alive, his music, and his interpretive depth. In this way, digitization allows the legacy of one of the greatest gurus to reach far beyond geography and time. Audience engagement. A Ministry of Culture survey in 2022 showed that nearly 72% of cultural performances in India were already using digital platforms. Tools like live streaming, YouTube, and podcasts became a new stage. During the COVID pandemic, almost every major institutions from Sangeet Natak Academy to Kalakshetra Foundation to National Center of the Performing Arts shifted to live streams to keep audiences engaged. The result has been democratization of art. Anyone with an internet connection can now witness performances that were once confined to sabhas or auditoriums. The Guru Shishya Parampara has always been the backbone of Indian performing arts pedagogy. Today, it coexists with digital classrooms on Zoom, online tutorials, and recorded masterclasses. Various institutions are producing rich digital resources for learning. A recent 2025 study titled Digital Footprints of Classical Dance points out that multi-camera shooting has created a new digital aesthetic. Of course, digitization comes with its challenges. Online audiences have shorter attention spans, moving quickly from one event to another. Entry barriers are low, which sometimes leads to dissolution of quality. Many artists face remuneration crisis, with performances being streamed free of charge for visibility rather than income. The energy and chemistry of a live performance is hard to replicate on a screen. These factors combine to create both financial strain and psychological stress for many performers. Yet, there are also undeniable opportunities. Fragile manuscripts and rare recordings are being safeguarded for future generations. Global accessibility ensures that an Odissi performance in Bhubaneswar or a Yakshagan in Karnataka can be witnessed anywhere in the world. For researchers, tools like slow motion playback or comparative analysis across decades of recordings have opened new possibilities. Online platforms are also building communities through podcasts, digital festivals, and interactive workshops. And in larger sense, digitization has made the study of Indian knowledge systems not only possible, but also global in its scope. To sustain these gains, certain policy interventions are crucial. We need greater investment in advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence and immersive tools. Public-private partnerships can bring in both resources and innovation. Capacity building programs should train archivists, teachers, and young artists in digital skills. Legal frameworks need to be updated to protect both heritage and performer rights. And finally, it is vital that folk and regional traditions are included in digitization efforts so that cultural representation remains diverse. Digitization is a cultural revolution. It has changed how we preserve, perform, and share Indian arts. At its best, it ensures preservation, accessibility, and global dialogue. But it must be approached with balance. Innovation must never come at a cost of authenticity. As I see it, the future of Indian art will be secure if we hold firmly to our traditional roots while also embracing digital wings. That balance is our challenge and our opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Subir Sokhi. So this was very interesting, almost archival-based understanding of what the initiatives have been from both from the government of India and also on a large-scale level, especially mentioning what is happening with the language processing models. But it also provides a very interesting kind of triadic understanding for this panel itself, because at the one hand, what Deboroti is wonderfully speaking about the human agency and how it is so much needed to transpire the storyteller and the digital medium. And Artem is kind of trying to propose a very important question: what is the purpose of the new world, which is the opening act of his speech. And finishing with Subir Sokhi's way to put what are the new initiatives being taken to bridge the gap between maybe storyteller and the story as a medium. With this, we are done with the speaker's presentation, and now we will open the panel to discussants, and we have been joined by two discussants in today's panel. Ms. Shrisha Sarkar, she is a Bharatnatyam dancer and an educator. She completed her post-graduation degree in performance studies at the Ambedkar University, Delhi, culminating in a thesis titled Decoding the Semiotics of Alarippu, Understanding the Body as a Link Between the Self and the Social. She continues to contribute to the fields of art and culture as a researcher at the Archives and Research Center for Ethnomusicology, American Institute of Indian Studies in Gurugram. And the second discussant is Ms. Vaishali Gehlian. She is a guest faculty at Miranda House, University of Delhi. She completed her MPhil in philosophy from the University of Delhi and is presently pursuing her PhD in the same department. She has participated as a speaker at national and international conferences on philosophy, art, Indian knowledge systems, meditation, and mental health. So we now open the session to the discussants to maybe have some more questions to the panelists.
Good morning, everyone. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to NBT and SCO for this opportunity to indulge in the discussion around art and culture and the dynamics in the digital age. So as we know that imagination has always been at the heart of human creativity. Even Harari reminds us that it is imagination which allows humans to evolve beyond survival. It enables us to weave concepts, nations, storytelling, myths, and epics. Kant described imagination as a faculty that mediates intuitions with conceptualizations, thus creating our reality in itself. Thus, it is the catalyst of change and of reality. So, even when we talk about Indian philosophy, the Vedic philosophy, we had the seers, the drashtas of the sutras, mantras, the mahavakyas like Tatvamasi, all born from imaginative vision. So I believe any art, whether it's the performing arts or as Ma'am Deboroti said, that the art of listening, how to listen, what to listen. So art is that reflection of imagination, of any culture. The beings of that culture, the imagination of those beings is reflected in the art form, right? So it is the imagination which connects art, artist, the artwork, and the appreciators of that art form. So in this digital age, when AI, the usage of AI has increased to such an extent that people make reels on how ChatGPT is their best friend, right? So, but of course, as Milind sir mentioned yesterday, that AI can reconfigure, re-assimilate that which is already out there, the research that has already been out there. And it, of course, so thus AI reconfigures. It can generate a poem, a painting, a musical piece with an astonishing speed which humans may not be capable of that speed. But the profound question is, in this age of digitization, of AI prominence, is it really liberating human mind or killing the very source of our evolution? Is it killing the imagination or is it increasing that power, that creativity of human mind? That is my first question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vaishali. So, is it pointed to some specific speaker or?
No,
okay,
it's
yeah.
open to the
Please,
panel.
whoever would like to answer that. Yeah, Artem, please go ahead. Thanks.
I think that AI just compiled that was made before him. So it, for people who are beginners in some arts and so on, made their minds a little bit lazy. So it may be dangerous for them. AI should be an instrument for experienced artists, masters to make their work more easy or more wide or more complicated. But for young people, for young artists, it may be very dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah. Any more connecting thoughts from Dr. Deboroti, probably?
Thank you for the question. Well, it's related to what my co-panelist spoke about, but I think it depends on the politics of using AI like any other technology. That it is not imagination, and artistic imagination is not dependent on resources at all, and it has never dependent on resources. It was never dependent on resources. There were times when we had almost, as a civilization, we had no access to technology, and I think humans were carving on caves and telling stories about their activities. So it's the need to imagine and the need to express that gives birth to, again, how am I going to do it? So I think any technology, including AI, is not and does not limit imagination. unless we are leaning on it in a way that we are, we come to a consensus that we are going to sacrifice our imagination and lean on it. So I think it is again a question of human choice and not a question of technological choice. That, what as a race, as a human race, what are we choosing to do? So I think it actually opens up ways of reimagining rather than limiting our imagination. And I can actually very quickly refer to my own practice, that as a theatre practitioner and as one who writes about and directs theatre, I always rely on the tangible. I always rely on the element of presence. But when I was working with my students during the pandemic, when all theatres were shut down and we were not making theatre, all students were resonating with the idea of being cut off from reality, of being shut down, but also of feeling homeless, feeling a sense of migration in completely a different way. And then at my university, we collaborated with the Department of Performing Arts at the University of Maine, and the students ensemble from India and from Maine. We tried to create a theatre together, and we looked at Naomi Izuka's play, which was also on displacement. So what we decided to do is we wanted to drive home the idea of trying to reach out to one another, the idea of feeling displaced. So we decided that we are going to film actors in India, and the film would be projected on screen while live actors are going to interact with filmed actors. Now, this technology did not exist before, or I have not thought of using this in this particular way if I had not faced with this moment of crisis. So I think it is the element of, the theme of trying to reach out, the theme of feeling displaced, that's already in Izuka's play, that searched for a form. And then the digital offered a form, or, working with the digital offered a form. So I think it in a way opens up innovation and artistic ideas rather than limiting it, if one is conscious about the ethics of using technology. Thank you.
My second question is, as we have seen, the ontology of art is described as the representation of what has already been presented to us, right? So it's the debate has always been between what is real and what appears to be real. So art is always seen as the mimetic, that which is recreating it's basically recreating the real, the truth. So we have always seen when we talk about art, so there is always the dialogue of truth and appearance in the sphere. Okay, so philosophers like Plato in his work like Republic and Symposium says that art is very dangerous. Why? Because it takes us away from reality, away from truth. On the other hand, Aristotle says art in the form of catharsis is the expression of truth. And Baumgarten mentions aesthetics as the representation again. Okay, and artists like Frida Kahlo or Amrita Shergill says that they represent their lived reality, their lived experience. So my question is, in this digital age, do you think the gap between the presented and the represented is widening or it's cutting short?
Yeah, so probably Artem, would you like to respond? Or you think, okay, Sima, if you would like to open up, and then followed by Deboroti. Yeah.
Right. So as you rightly said, we believe as dancers, we talk about digitization, about recorded music, but there is always a pleasure of dancing on live music. So what we feel is when we dance on stage with live music, there is a different feeling. And as Bharata says, the ultimate aim of art is to get rasa, and the ultimate aim of art is rasa. So when you dance on a digital platform, there is always a divide between us and the audience. And when we dance on a live platform, we look at the audience, we get the energy, and then we perform. So yes, digitization is the reality right now, but at the same time, the way we have been performing in traditional manners, but will not be changing anytime soon. So, right, there is this gap between us and the audience right now, but I think this is something that we'll have to live with. And with the changing times, and change is evident. So with changing times, I don't think we can go back to the ways at times, because as in case of pandemic, most of us performed online. So we had no other option. So that is why the gap is widening, yes. But again, it is part of our life now. So it will be changing over time.
Yeah, Deboroti, if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question to also think about as an artist. I think it's the time to, pause and think that what is the performance of presence and the performance of representation, or art of presence and art of representation, two different domains. So I think it's the time to pause and think that what is digital performance? Like, do we look at digital performance as creating performances and putting them out on social media or putting them out on digital platform? Then we miss the element of presence. But are there ways in which we can think about what newer intimacies the platforms could create that could make the performances immersive, participatory, and responsive? Then I think the performance of presence could be explored in newer ways. So, there is a huge bulk of artistic and works related to performance which are just filmed and put out on social media. Personally, I do not even understand those as digital performances. Those are performances put out on social media. But when I'm talking about digital performances, there is work which is done by, artists, I think, across the world, wherein they are exploring the potential of platforms like the Zoom or the Google platform, many other platforms, which can create newer intimacies where you explore the idea of, having a group of participatory audience. I remember there was a performance created by somebody called Ellison Troy Anthony, where they were mourning the death of their grandparents, and they created a theater on Zoom platforms in which participants, as audience members, were invited to share their own ideas of mourning or their own rituals of mourning. And that explored the potential of the online platform or the digital platform, looking at how it can be immersive, how it can explore ideas of presence. So I think it is really the time to stop and pause and understand the digital as a new space. Not a space where we capture something live and we put it out. Then we lose the element of presence, is what I feel.
Yeah. So any more questions from the discussants? Shrisha?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please go.
I'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so my questions, I again have two questions, and they stem from my backgrounds, which is working at an archive and being a Bharatanatyam dancer. So my first question would be a pondering upon the idea of online classes and online pedagogy, which is the latest boom in the industry. So in a way, when we have creators who put tutorials online, and there are many, many dancers who have recently come up who otherwise don't have a strong presence in the offline performance world. They have very strong presences on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube as dance teachers. So in a way, these are in the becoming of a different kind of archive for the performing art, whichever art it is, which is being concerned here. It can be music, it can be dance, but I'll be speaking in the context of dance because, again, that's my specialization. So these are new archival materials, and they are just growing and growing. So my question and concern is, what is it doing to the dance form and its pedagogical history for the future generations? Because, again, the digital performances are doing something to the mind. And what is being done to the mind of the performers and learners of any particular art form I have personally observed that that sense of digital perfection and overemphasis on, straight lines, clear lines, like digital clarity, that is becoming more of the focus rather than the affect of the content and the substance of the whatever piece they are wanting to perform. So that is one concern that I have. So what is this digital boom doing to the dance form and its pedagogical history, and how can we kind of negotiate upholding the traditional standards, or a sense of, like Deboroti ma'am said, ki, there's a sense of everyday ritual and everyday communion that has to be developed and upheld in order for survival. So in the context of artistic representation and preservation in the digital age, how do we negotiate these lines? That is my question.
Right. So during COVID, all of us took online classes, but that was a necessity because we had to earn. All the dancers had to earn. And culture was one of the most hardly hit industries during COVID. Most of the dancers and musicians lost their jobs. But when we see, as you rightly said, there is a disconnect between us and the students now. Most of us who have learned in the Guru Shishya Parampara, and when we enter a class, there is a certain ritual that we follow. We do certain kind of prayers, the way we enter our class, the way we do namaskarams to our gurus. This entire thing changed in the last few years. And this has impacted the way students behave now in classrooms also. And in case of neat lines, because now the dancers are dancing only for Instagram Reels. So in case of Instagram Reels, you only focus on what looks good on a camera. And in case of a dance class, you will focus on the nuance of Abhinaya, or even the nuance of holding a different mudra. And in case of YouTube or Instagram, it is only for the audience who can watch a maybe 20-second reel. And in that 20-second reel, you have to pack up everything that you know. So that has created another problem that, everyone wants that quick 2-second or 2-minute classrooms. Knowledge, and everyone wants to perform after a month because there are no new reels coming up. So this has created a pressure on the teachers as well, and it has impacted the pedagogy, because now wherever you go to teach, the first question is when will be the first performance of a particular student. And when we started learning, I don't think for years and years we ever even asked that when we will be going up on stage. So the digitization has impacted. Yes, the music is available, you can dance on music, but at the same time, dancing on live music is extremely difficult. And this is the real skill of a dancer. In case of a dancer, when you have a live tabla player for a Kathak dancer, or live musicians, Natavanar sitting in front of you, and so it is more like copy pasting and cramming up dancing. And now this has come up in our normal classrooms also. When you take up a class, when you start teaching your students and you sing and you teach them, they find it very difficult to even observe, learn the choreography. And what they focus is that, sir, we'll take 1 hour off and we'll practice on the music and come back. So this has impacted a lot. Second thing is our memory. Because when we were learning for hours and hours, we were learning varnams and pieces. Till date, I've never recorded any item that my teacher taught me. And today, the time I enter a classroom, the first question that students ask is, sir, can I record this piece? Because I want to practice this particular piece. So the attention span, the concentration of the dancers, their only focus is, am I looking good for the camera? And please record this for me, record this music, record this piece. So I think that has created another problem. The concentration and the attention span has been impacted. And for classical dancing, as we know, we learn a lot of shastras, mudras and vinyogas and everything. And for people like us who have learned in the traditional manner, if you ask us to recite a shlok from a particular page of Abhinay Darpan, we'll just quickly start reciting it. But for our students now, this is not the reality. So for them, they'll go back to YouTube, look for a shlok, they'll cram it up, and then they'll come back. And next day, if you ask the same thing, they won't remember the choreography or the piece that they were practicing earlier. So I think attention span and concentration, this has impacted a lot. And the way we teach in classroom now has changed a lot compared to what we were doing before COVID.
Yep. So any follow-up questions if you have? Sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, how do we negotiate all these impacts? That is what I wanted to kind of reflect on.
So it's like, tips to navigate the classroom. Yeah. Any thoughts? Maybe Artyom, would you? Because this is about, of course, performance, but is it also similar when it is a art form like poetry? Because how you teach poetry in a classroom, like in a student situation, and how they're learning it through online system. Because we do see in digital, probably this two-liners poem like haiku style. These are very popular in Instagram. So, do you feel that within the classroom situation, there is a way that people can teach these creative practices?
Of course, it's a good instrument for people who are not in the same place, who live in different cities and even countries. But in my opinion, the main teacher of art, of any art, dancing, poetry, literature, and so on, is life itself. So to become much experienced poet or much experienced dancer or painter and other artist, you should go go out from your home, talk with people, and try to note some things, some insights that you see around you. So, in other side, yes, it's a good way to cooperate when you are in different places. But the most effective way to become an experienced artist is communication in real life, I think.
Yeah. So, some more highlight in how you navigate in classroom, that especially with the current generation, because I in my class teach with 18 to 24 age group, and it's a day-to-day basis, like almost a struggle to navigate through this tricky space. Yeah, any thoughts on that, Deboroti?
Yeah, I think, we were discussing, and I brought this up in my talk, that even before, how do we digitize? What is very important is what do we archive? And I think dance pedagogy in performing arts has not been archived at all. Modes of teaching, particularly in dance, and my initial training has been in Bharatnatyam. So I think pedagogy in any traditional or classical form is a very, very interesting space to look at. What the teacher teaches and how the teacher teaches in class, not even finished performances. I'm not even talking about artistic production, the process. And the process has not been thought of or archived at all. And when we look at dance pedagogy, we can clearly understand that there are three kinds of schooling, probably. That there is the Guru Shishya Parampara. There are dance institutes, which are geared towards, developing and working on one particular form. And then there are university departments working. So, and I think all these have and they reflect different approaches towards dance pedagogy. That when we are talking about a Guru Shishya Parampara, what the teacher teaches in class is a kind of knowledge, and we talk so much about Indian knowledge system, but we do not look at pedagogy in how pedagogy is used in traditional knowledge system. That when a teacher teaches in class, it's more of what is transferred through memory to the body. And there is no one way of doing it. There is no formula. It's not formulaic. But each teacher in that Guru Shishya tradition has a way of transferring memory. And that is not even intellectual. That is affective memory. And I think that is transferred to the body. As much as it's transferred to other places of affect. So how does that happen? How does a dance institute institutionalize a form and the politics of it? Why is that form institutionalized in a particular way and how? And then university departments, what's happening with curriculum, with pedagogy, what is being taught at university departments. So there is so much to look at when we are thinking of archiving and digitally archiving dance pedagogy. And that would actually relate to how we negotiate teaching in class, because it's a very conscious choice. It's a very conscious choice about the path that we want to follow. about, what I am, how are we creatively thinking of pedagogy, but also with reference and within the context of what has happened to pedagogy so far in performing arts. So I think it's related. We haven't done the primary work of, archiving pedagogy so far. And now we are experiencing this shift into the digital, where the entire aesthetics and politics of looking at your own body and at your own art form has changed, and it's changing. So I think we need to start from before, is what I feel. Thank you for that question.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah, please.
There are
quickly.
two very good examples, actually, very rare and two examples of digitizing pedagogy. One is Priyadarshini Govind's effort of digitizing Srimati Kalanidhi Narayanan's entire approach to Abhinaya. She devised a new way of teaching Abhinaya. Abhinaya is the art of expressions in classical dance. And she has released it to public now. It is in public domain. And her entire pedagogy of how Abhinaya is taught to a student. And it is in the lecture demonstration format, where she is sitting in front of Kalanidhi Mami, and she is learning from her, and it is in public domain. And next is Kalakshetra has actually archived a complete margam, where our teachers, like our senior teachers from Kalakshetra, Jyotsna Narayanan, and all these senior Kalakshetra gurus are teaching the students the margam. And also there are few videos which are not now in public domain, but they're a part of the Kalakshetra. We, as students of Kalakshetra, get them from our teachers with the old pedagogy of how they used to teach and how we're teaching now has been archived. But I think this, as ma'am rightly said, that this needs to be in public domain before digitizing directly the choreography of how a particular piece needs to be done. But the thing is how you start teaching it, that needs to be digitized and archived.
So, any more questions? No. Great. Thank you for such a wonderful putting up in perspective, answering the questions from human agency to the actual classroom pedagogy, and also on the reflection of actual experience, lived experience, like especially what Artyom mentioned as talking to people, taking notes, or just experiencing life and seeing life as a teacher, such an important component to the whole discussion. With this, we are almost closer to the closing of this session. Now I would request Dr. Elena to maybe have some remarks based on the discussion we had so forth before we open up to the Q&A session to audience.
Dear friends, hello and thank you very much for having me here. I would like to say a big thank to Book Trust of India. Thank you so much. And in the beginning of my remarks, I would like to start with some story, especially a lot of dancers. I think it will be very interesting for you. When 100 years ago, very famous Russian ballet dancer Anna Pavlova came to India, she was so impressed by the culture. So she decided to get more about Indian dance. But in that time, that colonial time, there were no any support for Indian dance from colonial rules. And she hardly can find any dancer to teach her, to explore to her what is the Indian dance. So she went to Ajanta and spent there several months to draw in their fresque, to understand the poses, the costumes. And after 1 year, she created the ballet named Fresco of Ajanta. It's a very interesting story, and I hope it's just one of the example of collaboration between India and Russia also. So yes, what I would like to say, thank you very much to all speakers. It was really interesting for me. And the dawn of the digital age has transformed the way in how we create, consume, and appreciate art and culture. As our world becomes increasingly interconnected through technology, it's naturally that the spheres of human expressions also has changed. And I like the idea, maybe it's also the idea to discuss how the tradition exists in the digital age, because I think it's very important to understand what is the main thing. I'm fully agree that the human art and the expression of the artist come first, and the digitalizing, it's the second. But in our world, there is some threat to replace this. And also the question, do we have to educate the audience to understand what is the real art? What was created by human, at least, not AI? It's also a very important question. Yes, as Artem said, we can see the democratization of the art and easiness of collaboration. The digital age has democratized creativity, granting individuals from diverse backgrounds the tools and platforms to express themselves artistically. With accessible software, social media, and online galleries, aspiring artists can showcase their work to a global audience. The emergence of digital art forms such as digital painting, 3D modeling, the interactive installations has pushed the boundaries of what is possible. Today, artists use technologies to create immersive and dynamic experiences that captivate audience in new ways. Virtual reality and augmented reality technologies has brought art to life, allowing viewers to step inside the painting or interact with sculptures in a virtual world. Museums and galleries incorporate this technology to enhance the visitor's experience and reach a wider audience. In the same time, museums and galleries have adapted digital technologies by offering virtual exhibitions and online tours, allowing art enthusiasts to explore collections from the comfort of their homes. Along with this, museums and galleries meet new challenge: how to preserve and keep pieces of digital art. It's also an interesting question. Cultural institutions prioritize digital archiving to ensure the preservation of historical artifacts, documents, and artworks. Digital archives make cultural heritage more accessible to researchers and to the public. Cultural institutions and creators must continue to adopt this possibility of digital age to remain relevant in this era. Balancing tradition and innovation is becoming the constant challenge. In digital age, the recirculation of art has become truly global. For example, non-fungible token has enabled artists to sell digital creations as unique assets. And this technology has raised questions about the ownership, copyright, and the value of the digital art. The digital age has revolutionized storytelling with a mix of interactive narratives, podcasts, web series, and transmedia experience. All these things together give to the audience new, deeper level of engagement. It is understood that its digital technology are already the part of our life and the culture, but the benefits from its adaptation hardly be completely clear. For example, let's have a look. From one hand, digital platform gives the audience possibility of cross-cultural exchange, allowing people to connect with individuals from different backgrounds and explore diverse cultures. From another hand, this raises questions about cultural appropriation and authenticity. From one hand, social media platforms have become cultural hubs, influencing trends, conversations, and even social movements. The digital age has given rise to internet celebrities, influencers, and viral content that shape popular culture. But from another hand, digital age has brought challenges like information overload, online harassment, and even privacy concerns. And unfortunately, these issues become integral aspects of our evolving digital culture. From one hand, AI technologies has been integrated into creative processes, generating music, art, and literature. The relations between human creativity and AI remaining a topic of exploration. Along with this, ethical point must be taken into consideration. As technology continues to advance, Ethical questions about privacy, data ownership, and cultural representation in the digital sphere will become increasingly relevant. The future promises even more innovations, blurring the line between human and machine creativity, and challenging our notion of what art and culture can be and in which form. But it's clear that digital age has not demonized the importance of art and culture. It's amplified its reach, relevance, and potential to inspire and connect people worldwide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Elena, for such a wonderful remarks and lovely story. So I would like to see the more details on the story. But yeah, so it happens like it's a story, like a real story, or based on like the story. Yeah, the fresco. Yeah. Oh, great, great. So I have wonderful, fascinating insight. So with this, we can now open for a couple of quick questions because the next session is starting at 11:45. So we are closing. Okay, so there's no time for question and answer. But thank you so much for all the speakers and the chair, Dr. Elena, for summing such wonderfully that what is the status quo for the digital and cultural expression happening in today's time, and binding different thoughts from, again, human agency to the pedagogy and the infrastructural and institutional efforts that has been made from performing arts, from performance, and also of an art form like poetry. That was a very insightful session. And with this, we close this session. Thank you to all the audience and wonderful and patient discussant for your lovely questions. With this, we close the session now. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for such an interactive session. I now request our Chief Editor and Joint Director, Shri Kumar Vikram, to kindly felicitate our discussants, Ms. Vaishali Gehlian and Ms. Trisha Sarkar. Please come on the dais. Now it's time for a group photo.